All right, everyone. Thanks for coming. Well, I'm sure there's lots of riveting philosophical discussion happening already, and I'm thrilled to add more to the philosophy by inviting our very distinguished speaker. So a little bit about Dr. Fei Song. Dr. Fei Song is a professor, research assistant professor at Lingnan University, and before that, she was a professor at Nazarbayev University in Kazakhstan. And she is also an alumnus of HKU, where she earned her PhD in philosophy. Her work mainly focuses on the ethics of risk and the ethics of AI, and she regularly co-authors with and collaborates with psychologists. And in addition to all that, she is an editor of the Asian Journal of Philosophy. And apart from being a philosopher, she is a registered psychology counselor in China. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Fei Song.
Thank you so much. And thanks, Frank, for inviting me to come into Hong Kong again. It has been a while that when after I moved to Lingnan, I haven't visited Hong Kong for a while. So it would be very pleasure to visit Hong Kong again. And so today, my topic is focused on a new project. So I'm going to present something that I'm recently start working on as a new project. So the material, the content I'm going to present so far is just at a very primitive, like it's a primitive stage, early stage. So I think it might be a good idea to present it to the audience and meanwhile receive challenges, suggestions, comments, so which could help me to improve my future work. So this is a new project just recently started. It's focused, or it's about the trustworthy AI. So as we all know that artificial intelligence is inevitably quickly, fastly developed, and in the near future, it will have a very close interactions or involvement in human life. And here's a recent question. There's a lot of questions raised of the involvement of artificial intelligence in human life, but one of which is the idea or the issues of trustworthy AI. These issues have raised attention from scholars, policymakers, also politicians. So one kind of evidence is from the organizations such as European Commission High-Level Expert Group on AI, HLEG, has published a handbook about ethical guidance for trustworthy AI in 2019. And in this book, those experts at least hold or adopt a position that AI is something that we can and should trust. Also in theoretical literature, various scholars have discussed what is required, what it requires or means to that trust AI system. So among those discussions, either in public or in the theoretical literature, the kind of focus is on whether we should or trust AI and whether AI is an object of trust. There even a kind of new terminology is created called e-trust, which is to capture the phenomena that we do place trust in artificial object or establish trust relationship in digital environment, which is different from our traditional trust relationship normally we established with humans like friends, peers, or even strangers, or with intuitions or ourselves, or with institutions, scientific communities, or hospitals. But those are kind of traditional objects with which that human being establish trust relationship is either human or human involved entities. But artificial intelligence is different, it's unique, because it's a artifact that human was not involved. So whether it's the e-trust, whether it's justifiable for us to place an e-trust in artificial object, it's a question that I think it's worth exploring. Here's worth noting that something being trustworthy does not imply that people play a trust in these things. As Olayo pointed out, I think it's correct that being trustworthy helps in gaining trust, but it's neither necessary nor sufficient. Deceivers can attract others' trust, so misplaced trust is common enough. And trustworthy can be also denied by others' trust, so misplaced mistrust is also common enough. So here I think there's a three kind of questions which is distinct, but distinctive, but also correlated or correlated questions is going on in this discussion. So the first question is AI an object of trust? The second is how AI can be trustworthy. So if the answer to the first question that AI can be or is an object of trust, then the further question is what properties that AI should obtain in able to be trustworthy. And the further question is then what is a justifiable trust in AI? These three questions sometimes when you read or when you observe in the public discussion or even in theoretical literature, sometimes these three questions are kind of mixed up, or people doesn't make a sharp distinction between the three. Some scholars already assume at the beginning of their argument, AI is the object of trust, and then further discuss how AI can be trustworthy. And but it seems the case that while it's a kind of initial question, but given a plausible count of trustworthiness, whether AI is an object of trust or not is a question that we need to address or have an answer at the beginning. So here's a caveat that I want to point out at the very beginning of the talk. One kind of purpose is to avoid objections or criticisms. So I try to set up the goals in a kind of moderate way, not to be too ambitious. And there's a few assumptions I have to point out that my argument is based on. So first is this project at this moment has a focus on the literature of trust merely in the domain of philosophy. So there are different subjects they work on concept of trust. Philosophy, psychology, economics, marketing, management, they all have interest of trust because trust is a so important relationship in human society and often play an important role in a lot of social activities. So for this project at this moment, I only focus on literatures in philosophy domain. So it might be the case, I'm not sure, but it might be the case that something I said or proposed, I suggested is already said by other scholars from other disciplines. But so far, at least given my literature sample, maybe it's biased, but at least given by the literature I focus on, I hope that what I propose is something innovative or something new, which has not yet been discussed widely in the literature of philosophy. The second is my argument based on this kind of assumption. So the assumption is if X is trustworthy, then there is at least a prima facie reason. There is a prima facie reason, not reasons. It's prima facie reason for placing trust in X. So why I'm saying so, I open to the possibility that it might be the case that if something is trustworthy, but everything being considered, it might be justifiable not to place a trust in X. Okay. I'm not sure how plausible it could be, but I open to this possibility. So that's why I'm saying that if X is trustworthy, there at least in prime phase, there's a reason to place a trust in X. The second is if it is justifiable to place trust in X, then it means that X at least is minimally trustworthy. Okay. And the second kind of assumption or the second kind of attitudes I hold to this project is I try to be neutral to different account of trust. In other words, I do not argue which account of trust is the most plausible and under which I argue whether AI is object of truth, is an object of trust or not. I take a kind of neutral attitude towards different account of trust. And meanwhile, I try to be pluralist, okay, for the account of trust. So my kind of attitude is, well, all account of trust that has been discussed or at least widely accepted in the literature are all equally plausible. I'm not arguing one is more plausible than the other. And the goal for the project is it's moderate. At this moment, I'm not trying to be too ambitious. So I only try to present something I think a innovative and new alternative framework for trustworthy AI, which has not yet, at least given my literature review or my literature sample, has not yet been presented or discussed in the current literature in philosophy domain. But I'm not going to, or at this moment, I'm not trying to argue or asserting that this new framework is something superior to the other two. The other two, which is already presented or exist in the current literature. And here's a kind of a brief summary of the new framework for trustworthy AI that I want to work on, which I call network account of trustworthy AI. So the basic idea is, instead of when we think about trustworthy AI, when we discuss about trustworthy AI, instead of focus on merely AI technology, we should focus or look at the whole network of AI, which is including AI technology, but also other human or non-human elements, which is involved in the network. And also I hold this view that trustworthiness could be matter of degree. So there could be a maximum trustworthiness, and the degree of trustworthiness can vary in different situations or scenarios, given that the elements, the elements or the entities involved in the network varies. So for a maximum trustworthiness in an AI network is achieved when both AI technology is maximally reliable and other human actors, like AI developers, AI companies are trustworthy. And the degree of trustworthiness in an AI network varies from cases to cases. So let's start with a kind of short, brief literature review of the concept of trust in philosophy domain. So I take this kind of framework that's proposed by Mark Ryan in his 2020 paper. So he divided the current literature of trust in philosophy domain into three main distinctive account of trust. One is called rational account of trust, second called the psychological account of trust, and third called normative account of trust. So these three accounts of trust propose a distinctive account which capture different properties for a trust relation to be established. For rational account, claims that trust emerge for a rational decision-making process the weights the advantages and disadvantages of trusting, consider whether it is reasonable to place trust based on associated costs and benefits. Okay, so for rational account of trust is whether we should trust someone in doing X, we should make a rational decision about the cost-benefit analysis. The Psychological account, individuals trust others when they observe consistent fulfillment of commitment driven by goodwill. So for psychological account is for someone who constantly perform acts or doing acts, and that was because it was driven by a goodwill. Normative account of trust is a trustworthy trustee who can constantly fulfill the commitment by driven by fulfilling the moral obligation. So here's a table to illustrate the similarity and the dissimilarity among the three accounts of trust. So Ryan singled out 5 main components of trust: confidence, competence, vulnerability, betrayal, and motivation. Confidence means that if A trusts B in doing X, it means that A has the confidence that B doing X. Competence means that if A trusts B in doing X, A believes that B have the competence, have the ability to doing X. Vulnerability means A trusts B in doing X, then A will be vulnerable to B's action. And betrayal means that if B fails to do X, then A will feel betrayed by B. Motivation is B doing X motivated by some psychological states. Okay. So these two accounts of trust, for some components, they converge, but for some components, they diverge. So for the first of 3, competence, confidence, vulnerability, both all rational accounts, psychological account, and normative account can capture the 3 components. But for the betrayal motivation, rational account cannot. Okay, or at least for rational account of trust, it does not require the later 2 components. A psychological account and normative account will require betrayal motivation, but they disagree what the motivation for the consistent performing action. For psychological account, they assert that the motivation must be driven by goodwill. And for normative account, they assert that the motivation should be driven by moral obligation. Okay, so they kind of converge in the previous 4, but they disagree in the final motivation. Okay, they all think that motivation is important, it's necessary, but they disagree what is the motivation for constantly performing certain action. Correspondingly, we can also make a kind of category or divided the literature of trustworthy AI into 2 categories or 2 frameworks. The first framework, I call it non-anthropocentric account of trust. So for that framework, scholar basically do is to adopt or accept a account of trust which does not require anthropocentric requirements like goodwill, moral obligation, moral agency, those often related to human. So under that framework, scholars try to argue that, well, AI can be trustworthy or AI can be the object of trust if AI can satisfy certain conditions for being trustworthy. Under the anthropocentric account of trust, the strategy that the scholars often adopted is to accept a high demanding, like a account of trust which set a high bar, which often include the psychological requirement like goodwill, moral obligation, and under which argues that given current AI lack agencies, like moral agencies, lack capacity for goodwill, so current AI is not object of trust, but we can rely on AI given if AI can constantly produce reliable results. So let's look at 2 frameworks in the current literature in detail one by one. So first, let's look at the framework 1. So I choose one particular work from Simon and Kelp, who published this paper in 2023. So they're philosophers, they are epistemologists, and they adopt the framework one, which they seem first assume or take as a granted that AI can be the object of trust. But they argue that current literature or current account of trust, particular those account of trust which is set a high bar, requires ecological requirements for trust, cannot make sense of trustworthy AI because current AI technology so far does not have the capacity for having goodwill. So they, based on that, they further argue that we need to adopt something less anthropocentric account of trust, less demanding, set a lower bar for trust. And they follow Hallway's work of trust, which assert that trustworthiness simply involve avoiding unfulfillment commitment, necessitating both a rational choice to avoid new commitment and consistent fulfillment of existing obligation. So Hallway's kind of move or work try to remove those psychological requirements for trustworthy. But Simon and Kelp was not satisfied with Hallway's work because they think that first, the account has implausible implication because it will imply for a person who is extremely passive, never making any commitment, and never fulfill, well, then will never actually fail to fulfill any obligation, it was still considered as a trustworthy person. So they propose something more active, like positive, in the sense they assert that trustworthiness is a disposition fulfills one's obligation. But here, for obligation, they don't think it does not necessary to be a moral obligation. It could be a more general obligation such that it could also cover artifacts. So how to cover it? So they try to say that for artifacts, they also can hold obligation. But where those obligation comes from? It comes from the function of the artifacts. So every artifact has a function, or as a function, at least initially, was kind of built or created by the designers. So they call this kind of function the function. It's the designer's intention of it's designer's intention. Okay, the function was the function of the artifact. And the second is called E function, teleological function, which refers to that through the history of use these artifacts, whether it has a reliable success history of using this artifact. Okay. So before I enter a concrete example to explain the D function and E function, how it's kind of matching the concept of trustworthy, let me first just present this formulation of general account trustworthiness proposed by Simon and Kelps. I think the formulation itself is not that important, but here why I'm presenting this is there's two concepts, maximum trustworthiness and then degrees of trustworthiness. So I'm going to actually borrow this concept later in my own project, in my own argument. So for Simon and Kelp, the maximum trustworthiness defined is when one is maximally trustworthy with regarding to defying if and only if one has maximally strong disposition to fulfill one's obligation to fight. And degrees of trustworthiness to fight is the degree of trustworthiness to fight of S is a function of the distance from maximal trustworthiness to phi. The closer one approximate to the maximal trustworthiness to phi, the higher one's degrees of trustworthiness to phi. Okay. So I may not completely adopt this formulation, but the idea of maximum trustworthiness and degrees of trustworthiness, I will adopt it later also in my argument. So let's look at this example to see how Simon Kelp's account of trustworthy related to obligation somehow, well, based on this E and D function works. So let's look at a simple example of artifact, knife. Okay. Knife has this D function and also have the E function. The D function is if a knife is properly defunctioning insofar as it is working in the way in which its designer intended to work. So the designer has an intention of how it should work, and then if the knife is defunctioning well, it means that it's consistent with the designer's intention. And E function, if my knife is properly E functioning insofar as it works in a way that reliably leads to cutting in normal conditions. So here, there's a happy case. So when it's a happy case is where the D function and E function are consistent. So in other words, is the intention of designers, and also how it later in the history of usage, how its function are consistent. Okay. But unhappy case is where the D function and E function diverge. So it might be the designer has an intention of how these artifacts work, but well, when it's applied to practice to be used, how its function seems is diverge or is inconsistent. It's different from how the designer's intention. In that case, Simon and Cal said that, well, E function always on the top of D function. So when we judge whether this artifact is trustworthy or not, we should often refer or give priority to the E function. If this E function, if the knife, for example, fails to reliably cut things in normal condition, even if it's fitting with the designer's intention, we will judge that it's not a trustworthy. Okay. Then apply this to AI context. Look at the example of diagnostic AI. This AI have D function and E function, but D function is to design in order to recognize the tumor. And E function is, if it's properly E functioning, it means that the diagnostic AI can constantly and successfully recognize the tumor. So if a tumor diagnostic AI is untrustworthy, it means that it malfunctions etiologically in terms of recognizing the tumor, although it's met all its D-functional source obligation. So that refers to echo the idea that E function is often on the top of D function. So there's two advantages, at least emphasized by Simon and Kalbs in their paper. One is they say, well, for adopting this account of trustworthiness, it does not require their account of trustworthiness does not require any highbrow speculation concerning AI psychology. So in other words, by doing so, by lowering the bar, we could make sense of AI. We could accommodate AI into the trust discussion. And AI could be an object of trust because AI as artifact has function and it's D function, E function, and we can use this model to judge or analysis whether certain AI is trustworthy or not. The second advantage, they say that, well, this account can also deliver an independently motivated answer to the question, what is the trustworthy making underlying property that delivers one particular object list, which is kind of circulated in the public discussion, namely that to make a trustworthy AI, we need to make AI safe, just, explainable, human-centered, benevolent, autonomous, robust, fair, but rather than other kind of object list. So the kind of simple reply or simple answer to this question based on their account of trustworthy AI is that, well, when AI is safe, AI should be safe, just human-centered and benevolent. For instance, insofar as those properties amount to their being etiologically properly functioning, because functioning in a way that will make contributions to the explanation why they continue to exist. So that's the kind of advantages or merits of Simon's and Kelp's account, which under the framework one, they articulated. But what are the problems of this framework? There's a few which I identified. Maybe there's some more, or maybe those problems someone might think it's does not would not create any significant or big threat to their framework or to their account. So the first one I think is it's a general problem I think for framework one is, and this framework, the strategy seems to first you need to assume that AI is the object of trust. And then based on this assumption, back to check or back to select an account of trustworthiness, which can account for AI being trustworthy. But initially, I said at the beginning or the second slides, it seems the right order is we need to first answer whether AI is the object of trust or not, based on something highly plausible account of trustworthiness, instead of saying, assuming that AI is an object of trust, and then back to select what is a plausible account of trustworthiness. So here, it seems they based on this assumption, or they think it's a foregone conclusion that a plausible account of trustworthiness should predict that current AI can be the object of trust, which I think is problematic. The second problem of this framework is, in order to make sense of trustworthy AI, basically the account needs to be somehow lower the bar, right? Removing those psychological requirements which current AI seems at this moment lack or does not have the ability to have. So then that kind of move will, at the risk of failing to capture or account for these important distinctions between merely reliance and trust. So that's an important distinction that in the literature of trust that a lot of scholars, philosophers discuss, is that they are different between merely reliance and trust. And what the difference is, trust can be betrayed, but reliance is only being disappointed. Okay? So if it only relies on something and something fails to act in a certain way, you feel disappointed. So, but betrayal requires something extra to reliance. And if you lower the bar, then there's a risk of failing to capture this important distinction. Simon and Kelp thinks they could respond to this challenge. They think their account could reply to this requirement of betrayal by arguing that goodwill or psychological requirement like goodwill agencies is not a necessary condition for being betrayal. If something or someone fail to fulfill the obligation, okay, E function, D function, in particular E function based obligation, then it could constitute as a betrayal. Okay. But then it has some kind of implausible implication, because we will say that if my phone does not function well constantly, okay, if its E function function badly, then I have to say that I'm betrayed by my phone. There's a bit strange kind of expression, or you might say I'm betrayed by my malfunctional car. We don't say that way, right? At least according to my intuition. I'm not a native speaker, so but I might be wrong. But my intuition is a bit strange to say that I'm betrayed by my phone or betrayed by my malfunctional car. Because I think that when we say we are betrayed, betrayal seems to require some kind of agencies that should be obtained by the trustee, okay? By the person, by the objects that we trust. This is the first, I think, a implausible implication. Another is, it seems also in some cases, even as a human actor, okay, who has a capacity to have goodwill, have agencies, but fail to fulfill their obligation, seems not always or not necessarily yields or leads to sense of betrayal. So an example I use this taxi driver. So for example, I call a taxi driver and we make a kind of agreement that he will pick me up at 8 a.m. in the morning. But I also, reserve this time for his services for example, for a month. But for few mornings, he just failed to fulfill this obligation for different reasons, maybe for traffic reason or for personal reason, right? It seems to me intuitively, I won't say that I'm betrayed by the taxi driver. I would say that I'm disappointed that he fails to react to this emergent situation properly in order to fulfill their obligation. But I won't say that I kind of betrayed by the taxi driver. If this intuition is correct, it seems also suggesting betrayal requires some kind of commitment to moral obligation or some goodwills. Right? So in the taxi driver cases, because the reason why he fails to pick me up in time, because due to the traffic driver, due to personal reasons, which is kind of external reasons, it seems that the failure of commit those obligation is due to this failure of act of goodwill. So I see that, well, this kind of framework, by lowering the bar for trustworthy, for trust or trustworthiness, so in order to kind of accommodate the idea of trustworthy AI has the advantages which could make sense of AI, or could accommodate AI into this trust relationship, but the problem also seems obvious. Okay, and then that's the second framework. So this second framework is motivated by the idea that, well, it might not be a big cost of failing to accommodate AI into the trust relationship, because we could still argue that AI is reliable. Okay, we can rely on AI, but although AI is not the proper object of trust. So for this framework, scholars take the strategy that they still adopt a very demanding or high setting account of trustness, which require like goodwill, require moral agencies, require moral obligation, but arguing that, well, current AI does not have those capacities so far, so they are not object of trust, but we can still rely on them if they could constantly produce reliable results. And a lot of scholars doesn't find that's a big cost of just exclude AI from the trust relationship. So the advantage is that it could accommodate this important distinction between trust and reliance, just accept that trust is more kind of a high or demanding high level attitude than just reliance. Okay, we can rely on people, we can rely on artifacts, but trust just needs something extra, something additional to merely just reliance. So it's perfectly fine for us just to rely on AI without establishing a trust attitude or trust relationship with AI. And then the other kind of advantages for this framework is that, while we don't need to kind of assuming AI is the object of trust at the beginning, and then back to select what's the most plausible account of trustworthiness could accommodate. We could first start with the most plausible and then argue that AI is not object of trust. So the kind of question is focused on what can be a proper object of trust rather than just the theory of trustworthiness itself. And the third one is, under this framework, it's not impossible to exclude AI. It's just that given current technology or given our current conceptual framework, if we accept that AI or current AI technology doesn't have the capacity for those high advanced psychological capacity, then current AI unfortunately cannot be the object. But in the future, if technology is advanced enough, be able to establish something kind of equivalent to human goodwill or agencies, or our conceptual framework complete change, such that it can accommodate AI's this function-based things, something equivalent to goodwill, then we still could argue, okay, AI can be the object of trust. But we don't need to sacrifice of lowering down the bar for the account of trustworthiness. But also the problem of this framework, for some people, it's also obvious, or they think the concern is serious, is, well, if we admitted that trust is an important relationship and it's play important role in a lot of social activities, particularly like medical practice, financial practice, educational practice, that not only involve rational decisions, cost-benefit analysis, but also involves, for example, in a medical practice, we also require the physicians could act upon the patient's interest, respect patient's autonomy, and demonstrate sufficient care, okay, to the patient. So if in the future we aim to replace human labor completely with AI in those practices without fulfilling this trust gap, given that AI technology does not have the capacity of goodwill, only reliable kind of reliance relationship, then it could maybe jeopardize those important social activities. Okay? So the question is, if inevitably our technology will never ever be able to develop something which is equivalent to human goodwill, and AI can only merely rely on but never be trusted, then this kind of gap, how to fill in this gap, particularly in those like medical practice. Trust is very important in those practice. So here is come with, now we arrive to my new kind of framework I call the network account of trustworthy AI. So this is the third alternative, which has at least given my literature review at this moment. I didn't really see too much discussion about this. So the motivation of this, the third one, is try to reconcile these two frameworks. So on the one hand, could fill in this gap of trust, okay? If we remove or replace human labor with AI in the future, somehow could fill in this kind of gap of trust if we accept that current AI cannot be the object of trust, but merely relies on. But on the other hand, does not need to lower the bar for trustworthiness, still maintain or remain those psychological requirements like goodwill, moral agencies. So somehow kind of reconcile this two framework. That's kind of motivation of my third one, which is to shift its focus of trustworthy AI discussion from merely AI technology, but to the whole network of AI. Okay, this network could involve AI technology, but also other human or non-human elements or actors involved in the network. So for this account, there's two main theoretical framework or theoretical, two theories that kind of involved in this framework. The first one is called multi-characteristics of AI. This is proposed by the European Commission high-level experts on AI in this ethical guidance. And the second one is called actor network theory. So it's proposed by a French philosopher, Latour. It's not typically an analytical philosophy theory, but it's more like a continental theory or approaches to social science, social theory. For this one, I just by accident, but occasionally I come up with this theory, and I think, okay, maybe I can combine this with discussion for trustworthy. So it's really a coincidence, but I find kind of interesting, or some kind of intellectual sources or spirits from this idea. So let's first look at this multi-characteristic of AI. So in this ethical guidance handbook, experts identify three main characteristics of AI: the AI technology, the designers and organizations behind the development, deployment and the use of AI. And third is social technical systems involved in AI life cycle. So these three characteristics of AI later will be three main elements, components in the network, in the AI network. So I'm going to show in detail this model later. Actor network theory, okay, ANT. So ANT, according to ANT, everything is part of a network, compressing interconnected actant that influences one another. So actants refers to either human or non-human entities that involve in this network, such as technology, money, or animals that play a role that impact the system. So in ANT, the actor network theory, the best way to comprehend the system is to examine each element in the network. So I use the hospital as an example. Okay? Hospital is an institution, but also you can see as a network. Okay? There are a lot of elements involved. Some are more kind of close or close to the center, probably more distance. But there's a few main elements or entities we can identify in the network of hospital. So first, doctors, nurses, professional health professionals, patients, they are human actors. Equipment like medical equipment, medical facilities, even like electricity power supply systems, okay? They're non-human elements, but they're also part of this network of hospital. For a hospital to operate or run well, it needs to be all those elements in this system in a good place. Okay. So that's a kind of example. So now I would like to start with some simple familiar cases and analysis how we could place trust in a kind of institution, but consider this institution as a network, and then gradually move to AI, which is less familiar and more distant from us. Okay, let's start with the simplest case, place trust in institution like hospital. Okay, so as we said at the previous slides, in the network of hospital, right? Not all elements are the object of trust, given that we accept or what we admitted or adopt that goodwill is the necessary condition for trust, given that we accept or adopt a very high demanding account of trustworthiness. So not all objects can be trust. Not all objects is the, not all elements are the object of trust. So for example, medical equipment, medical technology, electricity supply systems, well, they don't have agencies, right? They don't have the goodwill or have no capacity to have goodwill. So we can't just merely rely on those technologies or equipments. But we can trust doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals in the hospital. So in a scenario in which that only doctors or other healthcare professionals are trustworthy, in the sense that they are competent in doing something, doing acts in treating to diagnosis the diseases, treating the diseases, and they act out of their goodwill by considering patients' interests, by taking care of patients' autonomy, or by demonstrate sufficient cares to the patients. They're trustworthy. But then the medical equipment and technology often function badly, either due to the lack of sufficient maintenance or because of the electricity power supply systems always cut down. But then, the result is that those equipment does not function constantly well, does not constantly produce reliable functions. So in that cases, we might say that we should not trust this hospital. Although the doctors, the health professionals, they're trustworthy, they're competent, but the equipped, the electricity powers, the the facilities they rely on are unreliable. Okay, now we might say, well, we should not trust the hospital, or at least the trust relationship should be significantly undermined. Or another situation in which that the medical equipment and the technology are pretty reliable. They function well, okay? But then the healthcare professionals are untrustworthy. Either they're incompetent or they are competent, but they always act upon their own interest when they're making medical decisions. They ignore patients' autonomy, their purpose, or they're ignoring providing sufficient cares to the patients, so they're untrustworthy. So in that cases, you might thinking that we should not trust this hospital either, or at least the trust relationship should be undermined because of the untrustworthiness of the human actors in the network. And if this hospital is maximally trustworthy, it means that both the doctors, nurses, health professionals should be trustworthy, and then they equip the medical equipment, the technology, the supply systems should be reliable. That's a kind of maximum happy scenario in which the hospital is maximally trustworthy. Okay, now I want to move to another case, which I think it's more analogous to the AI case, but it's more complicated. Obviously, it will create more kind of complexity and then make the analysis harder. But I want to try this one because I think it might be also some kind of real practical interest. So this, I'm not sure whether you heard this news that 737 MAX has another accident recently. The door of the emergency exit was blown out when the flight was take off. So luckily, the latitude is still low, so it doesn't cause casualties from the accident. But it's again, it's something like a bad happens for the Boeing 737 MAX. But in 2007, it's a disaster. It's a tragedy for 737 MAX because there's two fatal crash happens within less than a year. One is a Indonesia airline, Lion Airlines, and another is Ethiopian Airlines. And then it's raised a kind of issue discussion in the public is whether we should trust the Boeing 737 MAX. So let's look at this case and then again, under this second framework, a network account. So we can identify different elements or entities in this network in this Boeing 737 MAX case. So we have the technology, okay? That is the aircraft technology. In the 737 MAX cases, well, this technology is primarily based on the early 737 design, which is a very old version, and it was not preferred or liked by the pilots. There's some minor design problems. But in general, it's kind of served for by different airlines for a while. And the most important for the 737 MAX, it has certain improvements. They replaced the old engine with something bigger but more efficient engine, but that caused actually the accident anyway. And then they also replaced a distinct airframe modification, and the MECAS, that's the kind of technology which caused the two fatal crash. So and then the another kind of elements or components in this network is the Boeing company. And also there's the aircraft partner supplies. We know that nowadays the aviation industries is no longer just one big factory produce everything. It's just, it's the part of the airlines, the part of the airplanes have different kind of supplies, most from maybe German and Japan's. Those are the kind of company or institution that behind those technology. And also another kind of human actors in this case is particular is the professional who use those technology. And in the Boeing case, it's the pilot or maybe also aircraft maintenance inspector. Okay. So they they are the user, but meanwhile, they also, through those technology, provide services to the customers. Okay. And the fourth part of this in this network is the social legal institution that related to the usage of this aircraft. Okay, so this artifact, the aircraft. So in that case, it's the FAA, the Federal Aviation Association, which issued the certification to the Boeing, and then also the local legal liability system when two big crashes happens. There's financial penalties or compensations that issues to the victims. So if we look at this kind of network, then the question is, should we trust Boeing 737? Well, we need to look at first the technology, right? Whether the technology is reliable. Well, there are a lot of investigation finds out that there are some design problems. Okay, the main design problem is this MECAS, which is caused the 2 crash. That the MECAS they kind of only mimic the plane's behavior in the old version, but in the new version, they place the engine with a big one. So MECAS fails to react to the new kind of design and cause and generate wrong data or error data, which is caused actually the first, at least the 2 crash, but the Indonesia Airlines is because the pilot was not informed these potential problems and neither was better trained to respond to these problems when it's occurred. Boeing also in this case it's at least under question whether it's trustworthy or not, because it seems through the investigation and find out Boeing at that moment is under this pressure of taking back the market share for Airbus, because Airbus released its A320 in euros, which is extremely successful and occupying a lot of market share for Boeing. So Boeing was at this moment in the pressure of take back the shareholder by releasing something equivalent, which is the MAX 737 MAX. And then there's kind of clear evidence show that the higher level decision makers, they kind of sacrifice the safety with the speed of releasing in the market. A lot of engineer does raise this concern of safety issues, but were just ignored by the Boeing higher level decision makers. So at that moment, you might question that, whether the Boeing company, they are trustworthy in terms of whether they are competent to secure the safety for passengers, whether they act upon the goodwills to protect passengers' safety interest. And the professionals pilot in the Lion Airline cases, it's obvious that the pilot was not informed by Boeing that MECAS could cause problems, and neither they were trained how to respond. Even actually the American pilot does not know actually what this MECAS is. It was on the listed, but they never actually read the whole list because it's too long. So they don't know what MECAS, and they were shocked that it could be cause a problem. But for the second case of Ethiopian, Boeing said they have provided sufficient training and information, but the Ethiopian pilot just fails to respond, just fails to follow all the procedures. But Ethiopian authorities say that even though they claim they followed, but this procedure does not help. But no one knows. But in that cases, you might think for the professional who use this technology, at least it's not adequately trained, okay, to interpret, to respond to the technology when it's malfunction. And last, the social and legal institution, the FAA, well, it's the Federal Aviation Association. It quickly responds when the crash happens, but there's always a question why at the beginning it issued a certification to Boeing, given that there's kind of safety concern. Anyway, so we can see, okay, in that kind of network, in the Boeing case in particular, at least in 2017, we could say it's justifiable for us not to trust Boeing 737 MAX, given the technology is unreliable. At least there's obvious design problems. Although Boeing said, well, we can actually remove the makers and everything fine. Now it's back to market, but there's another accident happens. Who knows whether it's still reliable? And then we could also say, well, the Boeing at the moment is untrustworthy. At least there's no strong confidence. There's no strong evidence that they are capable and they act upon good will. Professionals, the pilot was not well trained, okay, to operate, to react to this technology when it's malfunction. And there's still kind of big question mark whether the FAA is liable or any at fault in issuing the certificate. Okay, so that's a kind of real case. Now let's move to AI. I think there's a kind of nice analogy between the Boeing case and the AI case because they're all artifacts involve complex, high technologies. But what difference is AI seems relies more on the software than hardware. And there's, like the question often discussed about the black box issue and then create this kind of explanation, transparency problems, which make AI kind of more difficult to interpret the result. That could be something that distinct from like an artifact like aircraft. But let's look at the AI situation or cases in which in this network, what kind of elements or entities could be identified in this network. Well, first, AI technology. Okay. So here the AI technology could involve both software and hardware. Right? So machine learning, deep learning, neural network learning, there's something, a kind of technique that be used for software, create issues, the black box issue, maybe the data issues, the data bias data, the opacity issues. Also the hardware sometimes also could impose some safety concerns by leaking data, by corrupting the data, but it's less, I think normally people concern more of the software than the hardware. But both software and hardware are all kind of the AI technology. I think it's a kind of box, it's a kind of package. And then the companies, the designers, which is behind those technology, like OpenAI, Google, Baidu, they're maybe the three most popular kind of software companies, and NVIDIA is the hardware, the GPU company. Recently, it's very powerful, very dominant the market. So the those company designs, which is behind the AI technology, also is a kind of element in this network. Professionals who use the AI technology, well, then it depends on the professional domain that AI is used, right? For example, medical AI, then the professionals who use this technology is the physicians. In the financial domain, the professionals who use this technology is bankers, insurance manager. So those are the kind of professional corresponding to specific AI that use in specific domain. And social legal institution, that could refers to in an institution which is monitoring AI usage or any laws legal system regarding any harm occurred by the AI usage. Okay, so I think personally, I think that this is definitely a kind of open system. So there could be different nodes, different entities, different elements in the network, given different AI technologies. Also for different country, different region, different professional domain, those entities could also vary. And the weakness of each entities also can vary from times, from different regions. So this kind of model or network is dynamic. It does not have one fixed kind of model or elements. I think it really depends on what kind of AI we're talking about, or what ranging we're talking about the AI application, and this model can be either extended or can be more simplified. So I take this open kind of position that it's the kind of whole network is dynamic. Okay, I think there's a few slides and then I will be able to close it. So I want to present here these two different cases of scenario in which that the, let's say a breast cancer, okay, diagnostic AI acts, no matter what is, okay? I don't know, I don't have a particular kind of product in my mind, so I just say it's a breast cancer diagnostic AI acts. I'm going to present different cases in which that this kind of AI could have different degrees of trustworthiness. So let's start with the happy case. In this case, the AI has a maximal trustworthy. Okay? This AI is maximally trustworthy. So in these cases, for AI technology, or let's assume that this AI algorithms used to detect breast cancer at different stage reliably produce accurate result. So the accuracy is more than 99%. So there's less than 1% chance that we will have a wrong answer, it's malfunction. And its accuracy for different race, different age group, and different region. So there's no bias. Okay? The accuracy is the same across different group. AI technology, the company, the technology developed behind this technology, there's clear and strong evidence that AI developers or companies show goodwill and a commitment to develop fair and biased algorithms, protect personal data, and provide users with detailed guidance. This guidance including the potential problems that this technology might malfunction and how to respond to those problems when it's occurred. And the professional use of physicians, the professional users, the physicians, they are adequately trained to interpret or evaluate the AI result. And there's well-established accountability and liability system for addressing the risk and harm occur as a result of the usage of AI. Okay. So in that cases, I say this case, the AI is maximally trustworthy given the technology is reliable, the company which is behind the technology is trustworthy in the sense that they are competent in producing accurate, reliable technology. Meanwhile, they act upon their goodwill. They have this commitment, okay, towards performing, developing a fair, just algorithms. And the physicians, they are well trained to interpret and evaluate the result. And if there's still harm or risk of harm occur, there's a well-established liability system could expose, correct those harm or those harm or risk that occur. So a less happy case, that in that kind of scenario, the AI technology is less reliable, but still produce okay result. Let's say 90% accuracy. But then the result is lower because for some age group or for some race group, the data is just biased. So it's unable to collect comprehensive data from that group because due to the background bias. So background bias could refers to in this particular society or this region or this race, because their traditions or their accessibility to medical services, it's just that much less data has been connected from that age or from that group. So that's why it creates this overall low accuracy for the technology in terms of predicting the result. But the AI developers, there's good evidence, a clear evidence show that AI developers companies show this goodwill commitment to develop a fair and biased just algorithms, although the result is not ideal. And also they clearly make it transparent that what the potential problem their technology is and provide guidance to users when these problems or when malfunction occur. And also physicians, they are adequately trained to interpret and evaluate AI results. And also corresponding, there are well-established legal and liability system to address all the harms or risk of harm that occur as a result of using this AI. So in that case, as I said, it's less happy, but we will still maybe still say that we could place a high trust in a AI like this. So there's a unhappy case, which is the AI is untrustworthy. In that scenario, the AI technology is produce maybe okay results, but neither the AI tech developer nor the physicians, they're capable, because the physicians is badly trained to interpret the results, and the developers, they don't show clearly goodwill or commitment to develop a fair and just algorithms, and the result is just okay. So in that case, we might say, well, although the AI technology is fairly reliable, but the rest of the components, particularly human actors, they are untrustworthy, we should not trust this AI technology. We should not trust this AI. There are two borderline cases which I'm less certain. So I would like to invite everyone to think about for me and give me any suggestions or comments. So that kind of borderline case, the first borderline case is, well, the AI technology seems pretty reliable. So it could constantly produce correct results, and the error is just lower than 1%. But then the AI technology developer, there's no clear evidence they show this good commitment or goodwill or commitment to develop a fair, just algorithms. So it might just be a matter of luck that it happens, what they produce is fairly reliable. And also, there's still like less than 1% of chance that it will malfunction, but in the user manuals, the company, the developer does not indicate what the potential problem is, and neither provide any solutions to respond to this malfunction if it's occur. Although the chance of this malfunction occurs low, but there's no extra instructions to the users how to respond to it. Well, in that case, also physicians are well adequately trained to interpret and evaluate AI. A social legal system are well established to correct, to address this harm or risk of harm if it occur. So in that cases is that, the technology is reliable, but it's just that the human which is involved in this network doesn't show goodwill or any more obligation commitment. In that cases, I'm not sure whether it's still justifiable for us to trust the AI, or we say we only rely on this AI. Okay. I'm less certain. For me at this moment, it's 50%, 50% maybe. And second borderline case is, I have my judgment is it's an untrustworthy case. So in this kind of scenario is that the AI technology is really unreliable, or at least significantly unreliable. So it produces, let's say, less than 70% accuracy. Okay, so the accuracy number is low. But then AI developers know, aware that's a problem, and they strongly commit to develop something accurate, fair algorithms. They realize, they know, and they make transparent to the users that what's the potential problem, but they just don't know how to be honest. They don't know how to respond. Okay. And because of that, physicians are inadequately trained because they don't know, like even the developer don't know how that inaccuracy occurs. They don't know how to respond to it. So physicians has pretty little information to be well trained. So they're badly trained. And also at this moment, social and legal systems, there's no clear and well-established accountability and liability system for addressing. I think this kind of borderline case is more fitting or more similar to the circumstances nowadays we are in. So I would think that it's a case in which that we should not trust, but I'm not sure. The reason why my judgment is that it's an untrustworthy case is because the AI technology is unreliable, and then physicians are not adequately trained, so the lack of kind of components of competence. So in the network, it seems lacks a kind of competence to perform certain action which is related to this domain. And my intuition is that here, because of severe lack of competence, it's just unjustifiable for us to just play a trust in a AI network as such. But I'm not sure. I'm open to any suggestions or recommendations for this. So here is a kind of summary. Again, I am open to the list of the formulation of the trustworthy AI under this framework of network. This is just more kind of summary that based on the cases that are happy case, less happy, unhappy cases that I come up with. So first, I think it's most obvious, at least among the three formulations, the first one is most obvious, is that AI is maximally trustworthy if and only if AI technology is maximally reliable in doing acts, and all other human or human-involved actors like AI companies are trustworthy such that they are competent in doing acts and they are motivated by goodwill or moral obligations. Okay. And AI is untrustworthy if and only if the AI technology is unreliable in doing acts. Most human or human-involved actors are untrustworthy. Either they're incompetent or they are not motivated by goodwill or moral obligation. And the last certain or obvious is an AI is merely reliable but untrustworthy. I'm not sure whether it's conceptually kind of consistent to say that, but whether it's possible for us to just rely on AI network but distrust the AI network if and only if the AI technology is maximally reliable in doing acts, but then all other human or human-involved actors lack goodwill or motivated by moral obligation. I'm less certain, and yeah, hope that we could have a discussion about this. That's a reference, and thank you.